record tonight. Here he goes, Miami!
Chances are you haven't seen this footage, but if you have, you know exactly where this is going. It was taken by a spectator in a Monster Jam crowd in 1997, and what happens next is absolutely devastating. Whether or not you've seen it, you probably don't know what led up to it or who this man even is, but that's why I'm here and I've managed to find all the details. So, I'll tell you everything, but as usual, let's get into the backstories first. In the world of professional stunt riding, very few performers embodied the level of fearlessness that 28-year-old Corey Scott did. Born in Decatur, Indiana in 1968, Corey discovered his calling at just 15 years old when he became captivated by the world of FMX. By age 18, Corey had moved to Florida to chase his dream, eventually joining the legendary Joey Chitwood Thrill Show, which was one of America's most prestigious stunt organizations. It had been around since 1945 and stopped touring just a year after this video was taken, in 1998. Over nearly a decade, Corey Scott honed his craft through more than 2,000 performances, doing every type of stunt you could imagine. He even won a national ramp-to-ramp competition that aired on ESPN, which at the time cemented the reputation that he already had for being extremely skilled. And now, at just 28 years old, Scott had achieved everything he dreamed of as a teenager. He was making a living performing stunts that made crowds go crazy. He still had a huge passion for it, and he wasn't slowing down anytime soon. That's what makes what we're about to get into that much more tragic. Late into the evening of February 8th, 1997, Scott prepared for what should have been another routine performance at Miami's Orange Bowl Stadium. 30,000 spectators, many of them families with children, had gathered for the US Hot Rod Monster Jam event, expecting an evening of thrilling entertainment, and similarly to a case I covered a few videos ago, for the most part, this is what the spectators would get. At some point, Corey Scott was ready to come out for one of his awesome stunts. On this night, he was being paid $10,000 to perform his signature net jump, a stunt he had successfully completed 4 times before. The setup really did appear straightforward. He'd launch his bike up a steep ramp at tremendous speed, soar 60 to 70 feet into the air, and then land in and grab onto a massive net suspended between 2 cranes. And as Corey Scott started warming up in the arena to build excitement in the crowd, few could have imagined that they were about to witness one of freestyle motocross's most tragic moments. So Scott pulled in his clutch, kicked it into gear, and started flying forward, but when he hit the ramp that night, something went catastrophically wrong. He got massive air, but when he eventually hit the net, he was way too high up and far off center. He frantically tried to grab the netting, but instead of catching him safely, the net bounced him backwards with tremendous force off of the side of it. We later see Scott plummeting downwards 60 feet outside of the designated safety area and landing headfirst on the stadium floor, which I obviously cannot show you on here. Paramedics rushed to his aid, well prepared, but the injuries were expectedly far too severe. Corey Scott was pronounced deceased at Jackson Memorial Hospital. The show was immediately canceled, leaving thousands of spectators, especially children, trying to process what they had just witnessed. I actually have a first-hand account from one of these medics too, and from other people who saw this with their children, and I was able to get some insight that is pretty disturbing. Apparently, while he was warming up, Jump by Van Halen was playing, and the announcers were joking about how nervous the Miami-Dade paramedics looked, and things just got eerily quiet after he fell. And I even found a public comment from one of these medics who was on scene. Here's a portion. He began to fall as we were approaching the 35-yard line or so on the scooter. He had a cup to catch him if all else failed, and then I saw he went to the left of the cup, and just before he hit, I closed my eyes. Others on the scene with me were so shaken, I felt they could hardly function because they didn't close their eyes. I carefully pulled his helmet off and noticed the ecchymosis of and around the neck. I pulled out his mouthpiece and began to ambue him. I can't remember for sure every small detail, but I know I intubated him. We got an IV line and the life pack showed only P waves. CPR was continued until the rescue arrived for transport. I was keenly aware that 45,000+ people were watching, and I heard the announcer telling everyone the show's over and to go home. Well, I got home that night, showered, and went to bed. The next morning, as soon as I opened my eyes, I knew Corey was above me in my room, in the atmosphere, so to speak. I didn't see him, I didn't hear him, I couldn't even smell him, but I knew he was there. For me, that was a comforting yet eerie conclusion to this brief chapter in my life. I remember it like it just happened and it was 26 years ago. God bless his family and friends. The tragedy sparked immediate controversy when it became clear that event organizers had provided no ground-level safety net beneath the aerial stunt. Multiple witnesses, including another on-duty paramedic, called Scott's death absolutely unnecessary and totally avoidable. One father who had brought 4 young boys to the show wrote a letter to the newspaper, questioning how promoters could allow such a dangerous exhibition without basic safety measures, adding that everyone at the Orange Bowl lost something that night. And if you do want to read this newspaper segment, it'll be in my source list along with the paramedic's full account. Corey Scott lost his life pursuing the passion that had driven him since childhood. He was laid to rest in his hometown of Decatur, Indiana, leaving behind a mother, sister, and a stunt community that absolutely loved him. My sympathy is with the tens of thousands of individuals, many who are young ones, who had to witness this live. The story begins in the mid-1990s in the Philippines when a vibrant youth culture was flourishing in the bustling entertainment district in Quezon City. After years of political transformation and restored democracy, young Filipinos embraced newfound freedoms, and the disco scene became a big part of student life. Many clubs were popping up, and among these establishments was Ozone Disco, a modest venue that had opened in 1991 in a building that previously housed a jazz club. These events became immensely popular, largely because they were affordable and welcoming to students on limited budgets, charging low entrance fees and offering meal and drink specials that made it accessible to nearly anyone who wanted to experience the energy of nightlife. Monday, March 18, 1996, marked the end of the school year for students across Metro Manila, and Ozone Disco saw this as a great opportunity to run an event. So they announced a special graduation promotion offering 50% discounts to students celebrating their graduations, and what would normally be a quiet Monday evening was something that everyone was looking forward to. It was going to be a night of fun. Word expectedly spread quickly among graduating high schoolers and college students who were eager to mark this important transition in their lives. So the night would arrive, and as darkness fell that evening, young people streamed into the approximately 50 square meter area, crowding the dance floor and sharing time with the people they loved. The DJ, Mervyn Reyes, played electronic dance music while approximately 350 patrons, as well as 40 employees, packed into a space that building permits had approved for only 35 people. But despite this, they made it work, and the atmosphere was absolutely awesome and very celebratory. Friends danced together, strangers got to know each other, and none of the poor, excited young people in that crowd could have imagined what the next hour would bring. Shortly before midnight, a spark flickered in the ceiling above the DJ booth near the kitchen area. Most patrons, accustomed to light shows and special effects at clubs, barely noticed or assumed it was part of the entertainment. Within seconds, however, the spark reached the decorative egg cartons and acoustic foam that lined the venue for soundproofing, materials which obviously proved catastrophically flammable. The fire spread with terrifying speed across the ceiling, and within 15 seconds, the electrical systems failed, plunging the venue into darkness, illuminated only by rapidly spreading flames. DJ Reyes attempted to warn the crowd over his microphone, but the system died before his words could reach anyone. When people finally understood the danger, panic erupted instantly. The hastily built mezzanine collapsed, crushing those beneath it, while hundreds of people surged desperately toward the only functional exit. A door that opened inward rather than outward, which was a design choice reportedly made based on beliefs about prosperity flowing into the establishment. The designated emergency exit beside a VIP room was blocked by furniture and led only to a firewall, not to safety. And this is the part that really shook me. Security guards who were outside, hearing shouting and commotion but unable to see the flames, believed that a fight or riot had broken out and locked that main entrance from the outside, inadvertently trapping everyone inside during the most critical moments. This is basically a modern version of what I covered in the last video. When they realized and they did finally open the doors, a backdraft occurred as oxygen rushed into the superheated space, creating what I read people describe as a tidal wave of heat that knocked down and harmed even those who had managed to reach the hallway. This horrible fire raged for 2 hours before firefighters could extinguish it, and to make an already horrible situation more horrible, their efforts were hampered by a lack of nearby fire hydrants, heavy traffic on narrow streets, and the fact that this venue had no sprinkler system. When rescuers and volunteers finally entered the charred building to begin the grim work of recovery, a task that, by the way, would take 6 hours, They found deceased individuals piled waist-high in the narrow exit corridor, many who were beyond recognition, and some who, I hesitate to say, were fused together from the heat. 162 innocent people passed away that night, making it the worst fire in Philippine history, while 93 others survived with devastating injuries, including second and third degree burn. And just in case you were wondering, because I didn't know this before researching this case, this also ranks in the top 10 deadliest nightclub fires of all time. I always hear about the Station nightclub fire as well as some others, and we should absolutely continue to talk about them, but I don't know how I've never heard of this, and trust me, there's some heartbreaking footage right here on YouTube that is associated with this as well. I'll show you a little bit of what I can shortly. I just want to tell you a bit more about some of those who were lost first. Again, most of the deceased were teenagers and young adults, students who had arrived that evening to celebrate their graduations. I even read that the youngest confirmed victim was 13 years old. It's just utterly devastating. Families who were searching desperately for missing loved ones visited morgues and funeral homes across the city, confronting the heartbreaking task of identifying remains that, in many cases, bore no resemblance to the beloved family members who had left earlier simply to celebrate a milestone. This is where the disturbing footage comes in, but I truly implore you not to seek it out, simply because of how rough it is visually, but obviously this type of footage is important in many ways. I will play you this short clip of a woman, presumably a mother, who was brought in to identify someone. In this actual footage, available on YouTube, you see the individuals laid out, you see everything. The president at the time, Fidel Ramos, immediately declared Quezon City under a state of calamity and released 2 million pesos from emergency funds while ordering comprehensive investigations by multiple government agencies. The subsequent inquiries revealed a cascade of things that I already touched on when explaining the incident itself. Negligence, corruption, and safety violations so egregious that investigators labeled Ozone Disco a fire trap that should have never been allowed to operate. The venue had no functional fire extinguishers, no sprinkler system, no fire alarm, no emergency lighting, and no proper fire exits. The inward opening doors violated building codes specifically designed to prevent exactly this kind of catastrophe. The mezzanine had been constructed without any permits or inspections, and most damningly, Quezon City officials had approved building permits and annual inspection certificates despite clearly inadequate documentation to allow a fundamentally unsafe establishment to continue operating with more than 10 times its approved capacity. The investigation determined that an electrical overload from faulty wiring had sparked the initial fire, but it was a systematic failure of safety systems, enforcement, and basic human responsibility that transformed a manageable incident into a mass tragedy, and obviously corruption too. This one to me is just mind-boggling. You literally could not make this any worse. Every single possible thing was neglected, and because of that, we had to see loved ones go through what I just showed you. And just imagine this was your mother or your father, not only having to do that and witness it, but having to bear the loss for the rest of their lives. And I create these videos to try and make people aware of these things. It's not a TV show. Like, this is real life, and these are real people. None of them had a single clue this would happen going into this. Justice moved pretty slowly through the Philippine court system, but there was some in this case. In March 2001, 5 years after the fire, a Quezon City court convicted the Ozone Disco owners of reckless imprudence resulting in multiple homicide, sentencing each to 4 years imprisonment and 25 million peso fines, with orders to compensate the victims' families, but the company's bankruptcy limited actual payments. Far more significantly, in November of 2014, which is already 18 years after the tragedy, an anti-graft court convicted 7 Quezon City officials of violating the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, finding that they had conspired with the club owners to grant permits through a series of corrupt activities. The city engineer and 6 other officials received sentences ranging from 6 to 10 years and were permanently barred from holding public office. The convictions, to many family members, represented a rare instance of government officials actually being held criminally accountable, but still, by now, based on those numbers, all of these people would be out. The physical building that housed Ozone Disco stood unused for nearly 20 years, serving as an unofficial memorial where relatives placed photographs and flowers to remember the young lives lost. In March 2015, just days before the 19th anniversary of the event, the structure was demolished, and by 2016 a restaurant had opened on the site. Survivors carry both visible and invisible scars, with many experiencing lasting psychological trauma and the weight of survivor's guilt as they remember friends who weren't lucky enough to escape that night. The Ozone Disco tragedy was shown to me by one of my patrons in DMs, Carolyn, and obviously as soon as I saw the footage, I was devastated. But the more I looked into this, the more my heart broke. I've always had an immense respect for the Filipino people, and I'm almost ashamed to say that I didn't hear of this until recently. My thoughts are with every single person who lost someone in this devastating tragedy. "26-year-old Vera Kravtsova was a young woman with dreams that stretched well beyond her home city of Minsk, Belarus. Years earlier, after graduating from university, she relocated to St. Petersburg, Russia, where she worked as a freelance model, building her portfolio while dreaming of breaking into the more international fashion scene. And Vera would eventually travel for modeling opportunities in places like China, Vietnam, and Bali, with each trip appearing to be a stepping stone toward the career that she envisioned. Her loved ones knew her as hardworking and adventurous, and she didn't just model either. She also had a fantastic voice. She often performed at local venues in Minsk and cafes when she was younger to support her ambitions. I even read online that she was a contestant on the show The Voice, but it seems that this is not true. Some Russian investigative sources later clarified that she had only performed at a Minsk club event with The Voice-themed branding during a local burlesque festival, not the actual television program. But still, her passion for both modeling and music was undeniable, and she pursued both with determination. Also guys, a heads up, things like this are unfortunately a very common theme with this case. There's a lot of untrue information, or at the very least, a lot of things that are unverified floating around. Of course, this is partially due to it being recent and the language barriers, but I do see a lot of Instagram infographic pages and TikTokers that are currently using unverified details to push the story, so I'll do my best to go through everything and let you know the things that we know for sure, as well as what could be true but is not officially verified. By mid to late 2025, things were looking great for Vera. She still had very large aspirations, and she was still seeking to travel more to pursue her dreams. And so, in early September 2025, when an opportunity appeared that seemed to align perfectly with her goals, she's very excited to take it. Through social media, Vera came across an advertisement offering modeling work in Thailand. For someone who had already successfully navigated modeling jobs across Asia, this seemed great. And remember, social media advertising is incredibly common now, and this is not her first time traveling for opportunities, so she had some experience here. The details in this advertisement promised contracts, runway opportunities, and more, and this seemed like a great opportunity for a model who was looking for international work. And so she got in touch with the agency and decided to go for it. On September 8th, Vera posted her last update from St. Petersburg, and within days, she was on a plane to Bangkok, excited for what was ahead. And she arrived in Thailand on September 12th, expecting interviews, contract negotiations, and the beginning of a new chapter in her career. But the dream dissolved almost immediately upon arrival, because instead of being taken to modeling agencies or studios, Vera found herself in the hands of individuals who had no intention of honoring the promises they made online. Her passport and phone were immediately taken from her, severing her ability to contact family or seek help while in a foreign country, one that she's never been to before. And what happened next has been officially confirmed by the Belarusian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. On September 20th, 2025, just 8 days after arriving in Bangkok, Vera traveled from Thailand to Yangon and Myanmar. And no, this unfortunately was not a voluntary trip or an expansion of her modeling opportunities. This was the beginning of a nightmare, and it would unfold within one of the many criminal scam compounds that have proliferated across Myanmar since the country's 2021 military coup. These compounds, run by transnational crime syndicates working alongside local militias, have trapped an estimated 100 to 120,000 people, according to United Nations reports. Victims are forced into cyber fraud operations, working grueling 16-hour shifts running romance scams and investment frauds, targeting people across the globe. Those who refuse or fail to meet financial targets face torture, threats, and many horrible crimes. Facilities span over hundreds of hectares, holding tens of thousands of captive workers behind barbed wire and surveillance systems. This is what is believed to have happened to poor Vera Kravtsova. Reports indicate that she was compelled to pose as someone else on dating platforms, luring foreign men into fraudulent schemes while under constant threat. These glamorous international modeling contracts that she traveled for had become forced labor in a heavily guarded prison disguised as a business operation. It is just absolutely unimaginable to think about what she must have experienced here, how it went from excitement to disappointment to having her travel documents stolen and ending up in what I can only imagine was complete terror. Contact with her family continued sporadically until October 4th, 2025, but communication soon ceased entirely. And because they would have had control over her devices, we don't really know if this was her messaging her family, but it probably wasn't her. After getting no answer for a number of days, her mother, who was growing increasingly worried, filed a missing person report with Belarusian diplomatic authorities on October 9th. The Belarusian Foreign Ministry immediately engaged honorary consulates in Bangkok and Yangon, and they sent urgent queries to Thai and Myanmar law enforcement bodies. Belarus's representative to Vietnam and Myanmar confirmed the ministry's involvement and stated that search efforts were underway. And because of the pressure, Thai authorities elevated the case to top priority. However, amid the official investigation, conflicting and disturbing claims emerged in media reports. This is what I was talking about in the beginning of the entry. Multiple outlets, primarily citing Russian news sources and anonymous messages allegedly from the criminal organization that was holding Vera, reported that she had been killed, that her organs were harvested and sold, and that her body was cremated. Some reports claim that her family received a ransom demand of $500,000 for the return of her remains, and when they couldn't pay, were told that she'd been cremated. These horrifying allegations spread rapidly across international media. And these details may very well be true. Remember, these are things that have happened to many, many innocent people in Vera's exact same situation, and now no one can get a hold of her. But for the sake of information quality, I have to emphasize that these appear to be unverified claims that have been hijacked by media companies to incite engagement. I haven't been able to find any proof of this, and the investigation is still ongoing. We just don't know yet, guys. Some authorities are disputing these media claims as well, though they don't get into what is specifically true or untrue, as again, it's ongoing. But on October 16th, 2025, a Belarusian ambassador issued a pointed statement addressing what he called the immoral and irresponsible behavior of certain individuals who distribute untrue and unverified information for the sake of hype, thus making the relatives and friends of the missing woman suffer even more. The Belarusian Foreign Ministry has confirmed only that Vera traveled to Myanmar, that contact was lost, and that an active search continues. Thai police have said similar things in that they haven't got any reports of trafficking or anything, but I don't know, even if this was happening, these are criminal organizations and this is very recent. I think we know what's going on here. But either way, what we know for sure is that Vera Kravtsova, a young woman with big dreams, responded to what appeared to be a job opportunity and vanished into one of Southeast Asia's most dangerous criminal networks. And this case has brought renewed attention to the scam compounds in Myanmar that generate billions of dollars annually while destroying countless lives. And other victims have been rescued from similar situations pretty recently. A Russian model, for example, was successfully extracted by diplomats after being trafficked under nearly identical pretenses. These stories, along with Vera's, also represent the over 100,000 people who are currently in similar situations. As you're watching this video, this is happening to that many innocent people. For Vera's family, the uncertainty is perhaps the cruelest aspect here. I'm not even sure if they know for sure that she is deceased, at least not as of me writing this. There is so much conflicting information, a huge language barrier, a ton of media rumors. I don't even know if my script is completely accurate, but I spent a lot of hours here, so it's certainly better than any slop you'll find on Instagram. Just put yourself in the shoes of this poor family. They have to wait for answers while navigating all these conflicting reports, many of which are very graphic. They're dealing with slow-moving investigations and even the possibility that they may never know the full truth. And though it is unlikely, I very much hope that we get some positive news regarding this situation. I'll keep an eye on it. My heart is with Vera, her family, and every last person who has ever been forced into a despicable criminal enterprise like this. And I saw this case on my Discord in the Case Suggestions channel, and as soon as I saw it, I knew I had to look into it. But also, if you have any cases you'd like me to cover, this is by far the best way to tell me about it, so I'll put the link at the top of the description.